Welcome to the Global Missions Podcast, a show for Christ followers who want to participate more effectively in God's work both at home and to the ends of the earth. Visit us at globalmissionspodcast.com to find show notes, resources, and previous episodes. You can also engage with us through Twitter and Facebook. We would love to hear from you. And now, here's your host, Rob Magwood, better known to many friends as Mags.
Hi, everyone. As we record this podcast episode, it's my first day back into the office after a special trip to Africa. And I can tell you, my heart is encouraged that the Lord is at work in remarkable ways. And I just want to give a quick shout out to my colleagues, Laura and Ruth, who have been serving in Uganda with the Voice program there, Values Orientation in Christian Education. It is a marvelous ministry that is being passed on to Ugandan leadership now, and they are reaching many young people, both children and students, with the good news of the gospel. It was just a thrill to be out there with them. Thank you, Laura and Ruth, for hosting me there. Today on this episode, we're turning our attention again to short-term missions, and I'm excited about this conversation. It's going to talk about a new tool called the GOJOURNal that we hope will be very useful to churches and schools and individuals. We're going to hear about the enormous investment being made in short-term missions across North America especially, and we're really trying to improve the discipleship experience of those participating. We want to cultivate lasting fruit from short-term missions. Let's get right into today's conversation. Our guest today on the Global Missions Podcast is Ed Vencio, who currently serves as Director of Mobilization for Send International in the London, Ontario office. Before joining Send, Ed's professional career included senior management positions in marketing and sales, both in the Philippines, he is Filipino, and the United States. Ed's now using some of those skills to help analyze issues facing missions and developing strategies for mobilizing folks. Ed and his wife Marlou have 5 sons who live in the United States and Canada, and they have 4 grandkids. Ed, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mags. Thank you for having me.
Just before we get into our main topic, please tell us just a bit about your current role at Send International.
In my current role at Send, my primary responsibility is missionary recruitment. This means looking for, connecting, and engaging with Canadians interested in exploring God's call for missions. So I work with a team of mobilizers across Canada who visit college campuses, who connect with pastors and churches, and participate in missions events. This role also involves finding ways to generate a continuous flow of inquiries coming in at the top of our recruitment funnel.
Very good. Well, we're glad to have you part of the Canadian team. This is a special interview for me because Ed and I are colleagues working out of the same office, actually. Ed, today we're going to talk about discipleship and short-term missions. Many of our listeners will agree that discipleship is a key responsibility of local churches, whether at home or on the mission field, and that we need to continue to strengthen discipleship in our churches. We also recognize, at least in the West, that the short-term missions movement is a very significant trend. Every year, thousands of churches send hundreds of thousands of short-term workers out to serve in various ways in various places. And today's conversation will bring those two themes, discipleship and short-term missions, together. Now, Ed, in your travels across North America, you've spoken to many pastors and churches and missions committees. What are some of the trends that you have observed as you've been speaking with these different folks as we consider short-term missions?
Well, first and foremost, a clear trend that we are seeing is that the number of individuals going on short-term mission trips every year is growing. Some estimates, for example, indicate that as many as 1.5 million individuals from North America go on short-term mission trips every year.
Wow.
So even at an average cost of, say, $2,000 per trip per person, that's a huge amount of resources being poured into mission trips.
Mm-hmm. That would be 1.5 million people at 2,000. That's billions of dollars every year.
That's right. Now, another important fact that was recently uncovered by research conducted by the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada is that 76% of pastors agree that short-term mission trips are good vehicles for the discipleship of the local church. Now, what this means is that the discipleship of the goer is one of the most important objectives of mission trips. So this leads us to a very important question. How effective are mission trips in general in building discipleship? And while we know that some discipleship is taking place as a rule, as a general rule, participating churches would be glad to raise the level of mentoring and discipleship that is taking place through the short-term mission trip.
So what I hear you saying is that we are investing, at least in the West, massive resources, time, energy, and financial into short-term missions, but that we would still like to lift or raise the impact and the discipleship of short-term missions.
That's right. Now, in order to improve discipleship, simplistically speaking, we'd like to do that by focusing on improving two key elements, reflection and mentoring.
Okay, reflection and mentoring. What do you mean by reflection, and how will it be beneficial for people who participate in short-term missions?
We believe that the way to improve or enhance reflection within a short-term mission trip is by teaching them to journal, to get them to do journaling before, during, and after the trip.
Okay. Why journaling?
Journaling has a number of benefits. First of all, journaling is an excellent way to keep a record, not only of what is experienced, but also what they feel and what lessons they get during the mission trip experience. Most of the time, even if the experiences during a cross-cultural mission trip are so novel, people generally have a hard time remembering what they felt or what they learned after the fact. This is particularly true weeks after returning home, when their daily, regular routine reasserts itself and their lives go back to the normal routine. Without a written record, memories fade and feelings eventually subside. And then second, as you write your thoughts down, you will begin to see the bigger picture of what God is doing. Quite often, this picture or understanding will only emerge later on when you try to reconstruct what happened through your journal. Only later will you begin to see the pattern of how God worked through the various elements, events, and people, even though these did not seem to make sense at the time that they were happening.
Mm-hmm. So reflection is an intentional act, and journaling really is the means that you're encouraging, and others have said are helpful, intentionally recording and then looking back at those events. You also mentioned mentoring as an important element. Why is mentoring important?
Well, mentoring is important because, first of all, we need to remember mentorship is a relationship in which a more experienced or more knowledgeable person helps to guide a less experienced or less knowledgeable person. In the context of a mission trip, mentorship for the goer is provided by a more mature, experienced, and trusted Christian leader or friend. The mentor helps the mentee to better process his or her experiences during the mission trip and draw out the lessons that the mentee can use to align their lives to God's will. In any mission trip, often the most significant teaching or mentoring moment occurs after the individual goer comes back from the trip. This is when insights about God, about oneself, and about others are formed and applied for one's life going forward. This is essentially what debriefing after a mission trip means. Unfortunately, there is not much debriefing that actually occurs in many mission trips. Not all, but many mission trips. And so strategic learning moments like this, which are crucial to discipleship, are missed.
So what I hear you saying then is these experiences are taking place. It creates potential, but we're not fully cultivating the fruit, perhaps. Is that a fair way to describe?
That is correct.
So the role of debriefing then after a trip includes what, Ed?
Well, the purpose of debriefing is to analyze, to process, and rejoice in what the Lord has taught you, the goer, during your mission trip. And more importantly, to see what God is doing in the world, specifically the country and the people that you went to. The key question that a returning mission trip goer should be asking is, what was the value of what I have just experienced on the field? Knowing what I know now about God, about myself, and about other people, how should the way I lead my life change? And so debriefing after a short-term mission trip can help formulate the answers to some of those questions and enable the goer to more quickly understand how God wants them to live their lives going forward.
Okay. So you have proposed, and you said it's simplistic. I agree that there are two main elements that would help us lift discipleship. The first is reflection. The second is mentorship. And now you have developed a tool to help enhance these discipleship efforts. What exactly, Ed, is the Go Journal?
Well, very basically, the Go Journal is a journaling tool that we expressly developed for people who go on short-term mission trips. The Go Journal has two formats. One is a browser-based web version, what we call an electronic web app, and the other is a traditional printed hard copy, pen and paper type of journal.
If you want to have better discipleship before, during, and after a short-term mission experience, how does the Go Journal assist with this?
The Go Journal has templates that help to do this. Now, a template is essentially a set of questions that serve as a guide to help stimulate thinking and record experiences, feelings, impressions, and lessons throughout the mission trip experience.
So this is something that a short-term team participant would use on an ongoing basis?
That's correct. There are templates that are designed for before the trip, during the trip, and after.
Okay. And how often would someone use the Go Journal?
Well, for during the trip, there is a daily template. That daily template essentially consists of 3 parts. Remember that the objective is to get them to reflect more on what is happening. And so the first part of the template consists of a devotional, which is a suggested scripture passage to study and a related reflection question on that passage. The second part is a set of questions that help them to record the experiences for that day. For example, where they were, what they did, who they met, and all that. The third part of the template is a set of questions designed to provoke thinking on what they are learning about God, what they are learning about themselves, about other people, and about what God is doing in the world.
So in summary, Ed, why do you think that short-term mission leaders, team leaders, should consider using the Go Journal?
As mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons why churches send their members on short-term mission trips is to better disciple them. And the best way to accomplish this is by engaging the goers in reflection during their time on the field and debriefing them after they come back. So the Go Journal system, using templates and resources, will make possible a greater level of reflection and mentoring before, during, and after the short-term mission trip.
Okay, very good. Well, in a moment, Ed is going to share some more details about the Go Journal, some of the costs involved, how to get a copy, and so on. Just before we do that, I'd like to do 2 things. The first is to share about some other episodes related to this topic. The first is episode 22, which was with Don Johnson, entitled How to Debrief a Short-Term Mission Team. And then also episodes 68 through 71, which is a mini series of episodes, How to Do Short-Term Missions with Excellence. You can find those on the website and type in the numbers or search in the search bar for short-term missions. The other thing I'd like to do is share with you about an organization that helps sponsor the Global Missions Podcast and which may be helpful to you and your church.
Your profession, your skills, your passions. It's you making disciples of the nations. Crossworld desires to help you engage the world's least reached marketplaces in the ways God has gifted you. To learn more about Crossworld and their global opportunities, we invite you to visit crossworld.org today. And now, back to today's conversation.
We're back with Ed Vencio, who has been highlighting a new tool for discipleship in short-term missions called the Go Journal. Ed's been helping us understand why short-term team leaders and churches may want to consider using this tool. Ed, let's talk now about some of the specifics, including one of the very important questions people will ask about cost. Now, you've mentioned 2 formats. First of all, the electronic format, the web-based app. Is there any cost to using the electronic Go Journal?
The browser-based electronic Go Journal web app is free.
Okay, that's free. Now, we also acknowledge that some team leaders will not want their members to bring electronic devices on mission trips. Some churches have said we'd like our youth, for example, not to take their smartphones with them. We're going to give them a week or 2 or a few weeks offline. What about the hard copy? Is there a fee for the hard copy, Ed?
Yes, there is a standard set of printed workbooks covering the 3 phases of a mission trip that are going to be available. For the pricing, you can visit the website to get the current pricing for that printed option. It is also possible to customize a print version, and depending on the team's particular needs. And there is just a modest fee that is charged depending on the complexity of the customization that is desired.
Another question, Ed. Who has designed the Go Journal and brought this material together?
The Go Journal was conceived and developed by Send Canada with the collaboration of a number of mission agencies, namely Christar, Ethnos, Team, and OMF. What we basically did was to compile and curate content from various sources and assemble them to use in the context of a short-term mission trip. For example, we referenced some of the excellent resources already out there and brought them together. Materials from the Standards of Excellence in Short-Term Missions and experienced STM experts like Tim Dearborn, David Armstrong, and several others.
We want to acknowledge that there's a lot of good writing out there, but really you've curated this material to bring it together in one useful form.
That's correct.
So if Send Canada has designed this Go Journal, so to speak, does that mean that it can only be used by people who are going to serve with Send?
Absolutely not. It can be used by any person going on any mission trip, either individually or with a trip organized by their church or any other mission agency. Now, aside from Send, there are 3 other agencies who are using the Go Journal currently for their mission trips. That's Christar, Ethnos, and Team.
Okay.
But it is available to anyone going on any mission trip.
Very good. Okay. Well, at the end of the podcast, we'll have information how you can learn more about that. Just as we begin to wind down, though, Ed, I wonder whether you could share with us a story from someone who has appreciated using the Go Journal.
Yes, we actually had a young man who went to Asia on a short-term mission trip with Send. He was one of the first individuals who actually used the Go Journal. Mm-hmm. Let me read to you what he wrote as feedback for the Go Journal. He said, "I am thankful for the Go Journal as I haven't journaled before, and it gave me a structure to use. And one area that it had a real impact was helping me to shift my focus from what didn't happen to seeing and reflecting each day on how God worked both in the ministry and in my life."
Very good. Glad to hear that it's being used and appreciated by some of our short-term workers. Ed, if a short-term mission leader or a church or another agency wants to make use of the Go Journal, how should they get started?
The best way really is to visit www.gojournal.org to learn more about what the Go Journal is. And on the website, they will find the link, or you will find the link to the web app where you can register for the electronic version of the Go Journal. Or if you have any questions related to the Go Journal, send an email to info@gojournal.org.
And does that come to you, Ed?
Yes, it does. But they can also contact me directly through my email address, which is edv@sendcanada.org.
Very good. We'll include all of that in the show notes as well, so you can get both the websites and the email addresses that might be helpful to you. Ed, I want to thank you for the work that you've done to pull together a very promising resource that's been used by many people already and has great potential. Thanks for your work on that, and thanks for spending this time with us today.
You're very welcome, Mag. Thank you for having me.
Well, that concludes today's conversation. Remember, you can find any sites or email addresses that Ed mentioned in today's episode in the show notes at globalmissionspodcast.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to subscribe by using your favorite podcast app. As our regular listeners know, we're always glad to hear from you with suggested topics or interviews you'd like us to consider. We are planning for season 4. We would love to hear from you. And also, if you have a word of encouragement for our team, we'd love to hear that as well. Thanks for your encouragement. That is all for today. The Global Missions Podcast is produced by the Jaffrey Center for Global Initiatives and Send International of Canada in collaboration with other like-minded agencies. On behalf of our team here, thanks for listening, and we invite you to join us again in 2 weeks when we'll continue to explore the grand adventure of being Christ's witnesses to the ends of the earth.